welcome back. I was just asked if I yelled this loud at home, and I said I didn't know I was that loud.
Sure.
Kevin Daniels is back with us. Hi, Kevin.
Ben, how are you?
I'm good, man. You project. You're loud.
I do.
You do.
Yes, I do. I've been told that folks who talk on the phone to me hold the phone about 6 to 8 inches from their ear.
Yeah.
You got a good voice, though.
Well,
It's pleasant. Don't worry.
not always.
We are joined here by Kevin Daniels, a marketing copywriter with 20 years experience who's appeared on Cairo 7's TV's Better Northwest program, has spoken at all sorts of colleges, national conventions, and other events. We're lucky to have him. So, Kevin, let's talk a little bit about, kind of this piece of of putting together your resume. A lot of people are out hunting for jobs still, although it seems to be that the job market is strong. Let's talk a little bit about maybe that last piece. I mean, there's this editing piece that really goes into it because, if I were reading a resume and there's a whole bunch of misspellings, I might think, this person probably isn't the right person.
Right. Well, exactly, Ben. Thank you for moving my microphone.
You're welcome. Although people might listen to their phone 6 to 8 inches away, we try to keep your mouth about 2 inches away from the microphone.
I wasn't talking loud enough. Anyway, absolutely. So what I talked about the last time I was on the program was kind of the first part of the editing piece, which was development, copy development editing. So that's more of like, what do I write? This is more like once I write it and I have that sort of first draft, I don't want to send that first draft out before checking it over. So when I'm checking it over, what are some of the things that I need to be very concerned with that are little minor details that might be very annoying to some and confusing, but nonetheless very important as far as the overall professional presentation of the document is concerned. One thing that I hear from people who aren't big grammar and syntax fans is, well, nobody cares about that. Most people don't know the real rules or the right rules anyway, so I can get away with. I've heard some people say that.
Those sound like excuses.
They sound like excuses, but the fact of the matter is that's actually partially true because there's many folks who don't, but there's going to be somebody who's a grammar stickler. And if the reader of that resume they're going to be less impressed with you if you have even minor little syntax problems in your resume. So what I'm gonna do, and I talked about some of this stuff.
Well, but this seems like, yes, a lot of people don't care. I mean, you sit there and you're text messaging people, and it's you're writing the letter U, or there are all these ways that people communicate now that aren't necessarily hinging on grammar.
Absolutely,
I mean, that is the truth.
Yes, and I think that's a good point. I think that's made it worse. I think that's made people pay less attention to proper grammar and syntax because people are
speaking good, talking good.
Yeah, right. They're in the online world and they're in the email world, and it's all about sending it out the fastest.
Efficiency,
so it's all about writing. It doesn't matter whether it's right or not. Just I'm conveying a point. Okay.
And in fact, there are some email courses that I've seen that say get your point across as short as possible.
Absolutely. And that's fine. That's fine. There's different rules of etiquette.
But a resume is not an email back.
It's not an email back. Exactly. And now I was actually figuring out, okay, what did I go over the last time? So I actually checked out on the internet. I found the video of the last time I was on here. And I looked at it, just what did I go over? And I actually felt like I was a little slightly misleading the last time I was on here, not terribly clear about what I was saying. So I wanted to clarify. What I had said last time was, hey, when you're writing a resume, it's not exactly like a cover letter, so you don't have to be absolutely spot on with the rules of grammar and syntax. I actually did say that, and it is true because you don't have to have complete sentences in a resume, for one thing. It's very common not to have a complete sentence because it's basically marketing writing. It's a form of marketing writing. And oftentimes you won't have a quote-unquote complete sentence. You're creating sound bites to be placed in the mind of the reader is what you're doing in the writing of the resume. So it's not always going to be 100% right on with it. But punctuation is something that always has to be done correctly. And so I'm going to go over some very common things that come up. And just run through some tips and just some things that I think are worth mentioning. So the first thing I wanted to mention was if anyone out there is, let's say they're writing their resume right now and they want to make sure that they're right on top of the elements of style, There's a couple of great tomes you can buy at any local bookstore. One of them is Strunk and White's. Strunk, that's Strunk, and White's, just like it sounds, The Elements of Style.
That's not a fashion book?
It is not. Exactly. It is not. No, it's not it's not a book about makeovers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Shoot.
And
Then maybe I'll read it.
it's fewer than 100 pages. So that's actually the one that I recommend. And you should be able to find that at any bookstore. So that'll help you out with these things like I'm going to go over. So one of these abbreviations, what's the proper way to express an abbreviation? And what's the difference between an abbreviation and an acronym? And all these things like that. So I'm going to go over that real quickly. These abbreviations, these are not earth-shattering. For instance, the correct abbreviation of continued is CONT, period. Department is DEPT, period. Approximately is APPROX, period. And all those are are lowercase letters. And closures is ENCL. That's actually capitalized for some reason. Weird. Okay?
So that's why it's so hard to get people to follow the rules,
because
they don't make
there are
sense.
no rules. There are no rules whatsoever. That's the thing. If there's a rule, there's going to be an exception to that rule.
Like neighbors.
Exactly.
E before I, except after, right?
Exactly. That's why that's why it's sometimes helpful to have a reference guide like the one I just mentioned before, because even if there's a rule, it's just so often.
And we can post that later on our page. So
here's one that comes up all the time. Associate, like when you're talking about your degree. Okay, how do I say I have an associate's degree? Okay, the proper way is associate singular of arts, and the associate and the arts are capitalized. Okay, and another way to do it is associate's degree, but that is not capitalized when you say associate's degree, because it's not a formal rendering of the degree. And that's not capitalized, and that's actually possessive apostrophe S, associate's degree. So those are the two correct ways, and you will see 100 different ways that people try to write this, okay? Associate in arts, some people will say associates of arts. Those are incorrect. The correct ones are what I just said. Bachelor of Science, some people prefer not to use the BS abbreviation.
Can't imagine why. You want to be like...
They might secretly feel that their degree was BS, but they would rather say Bachelor of Science, and that's the way to do it. Bachelor, singular, of Science, and that's capitalized, but not the
that? Do you know? Like, why is it called a Bachelor of Science? Like,
that's a great question.
Single dudes who did science? I don't know.
Yeah. And shouldn't the politically correct way now be like single woman, single gal of science?
A single person.
Yeah.
Or like
Master.
Bachelor with like a little parentheses, ETTE, just in case.
Right.
My bachelorette in economics.
Yeah.
Exactly. Master of Arts. I'll end with this one. We'll move on. Master of Arts, not masters of arts. It's actually master, singular, of arts, or master's degree. But if you write it as master's degree with an apostrophe S, it's not capitalized. And then it's not master in arts or not masters of arts. So those are some common ones with the degrees. This comes up all the time when I do someone's resume, and it's almost always wrong when someone sends it to me. Again, is it the end of the world? Is it the biggest deal in the world? Not really. Is it going to make or break like whether you get a job or an interview or not? Perhaps not.
But it could.
If someone is a stickler, if someone is a grammar stickler, the grammar police are not a forgiving lot.
They're not,
because I'm one of them.
My wife's an editor. I live with grammar police.
When I see that, when I see something like that, I sort of like feel that way too. So I can relate to that whole concept. But okay, so acronyms. Who here knows the difference between an acronym and an abbreviation? Who can articulate that?
The acronym is going to be multiple first letters lined up, right? Like,
right.
If it was like a 4-letter word or four word, I'll let you explain it.
Right. Well, that's the thing. It's hard to articulate.
Yeah.
It's hard to articulate.
I know what I'm thinking.
But you're right. It's a shortened form it's a shortened form of a phrase, like an abbreviation, with the distinction that it can be pronounced as a word. So IRS would not be an acronym, but HUD, Housing and Urban Development, would be an acronym because it actually makes a fake word.
So if the vowels are actually in the right place and it could be pronounced essentially.
Yeah. Now, those are capitalized. Except there are some exceptions, Ben.
Really?
And this is something I learned. The word laser is not capitalized, but it is an acronym, and it stands for Light Amplification by Stimulated Emission of Radiation, which sounds like it shouldn't even really be suitable for a family radio show.
Yeah,
almost.
probably not.
Really, but that's what it stands for. The word bit is binary digit. That's actually just a mosh together of the phrase binary digit,
which
bit.
is like bytes and bits and
you
megabytes.
you don't capitalize that one. So go figure. Another thing that we talked about last time actually was the active voice, the importance of putting your resume copy in the active voice. So when you go through and you check your work, so to speak, before you're sending your resume out, just try to make sure that that your phrases are in the active voice. And once again, what that means is
explain that.
is that the verb is being done by the subject of the sentence. Okay, so in other words, you could. I'll just use the example that's here. The legal department negotiated 7 new contracts. That would be active voice. Passive voice is 7 new contracts were negotiated by the legal department. Again, not that big of a deal. It's just punchier, and the action comes at the front of the phrase of the sentence as opposed to the end. And it also implies that there's more doing happening as opposed to sort of the passive being done.
We're here with Kevin Daniels, owner of Northwest Resume and Career Services. Kevin, we just have a couple minutes left before we have to go to break. But I mean, I guess that the active voice, like you say, I guess that at least there seems to be a concrete understanding of why that would be important. From the standpoint of it makes you appear that you are actually active, you are doing things,
right?
Especially if somebody just kind of, goes through it real quick. And I know most resumes are. I mean, now they sometimes just search through a computer for keywords before anybody even looks at them.
Right.
But it would have seemed that if somebody can appear in their sentence or bullet points, or you could probably tell me what you're supposed to use, but if those sentences are structured in something that is active, that would, that could make sense. Like, oh, you're gonna strike a chord in the potential reader.
Right. Exactly. And that's almost more on the development editing side of things, like how you're going to say what you're saying. Again, you're trying to put little sound bites, as I say, in the mind of the reader that are memorable, that sort of stick, that later they remember, oh, right, that's the person who is really good at doing this, this, and this. I remember that. And there's a way to do it most effectively and a way to do it not quite as effectively. And that's what this is. That's what the sort of the development editing piece is about. This technical stuff is really the stuff that, if you really want to be following your P's and Q's and doing what you want to be doing technically with the document, then, spend some time looking at this stuff once you've done your initial writing of it and run through it and make sure it's all completely accurate and ready to go.
Well, yeah, and you don't want to give anybody a reason to stumble over something, like any unnecessary, bad parts of your resume.
I'm sorry, one more, Ben, do I have time for one more little?
Yes.
Well, no, I'm sorry. I just wanted to say one more thing. That is, the most important thing about all this is consistency. If you decide to use abbreviations, like the abbreviation for a state, Washington, WA, use it the whole resume that way instead of in one place spelling out Washington, another place doing a WA abbreviation.
Because otherwise you notice it.
Right.
If it's different, you tend to notice that.
Right.
I think. I would.
Sure.
Well, Kevin,
all right.
There's your last thing, buddy.
All right.
Thanks so much.
I didn't mean to interrupt you there, sir.
You're fine.
I screwed your rhythm up.
Oh,
sorry.
Well, at least you did it with good punctuation.
All right, exactly.
Kevin Daniels, thanks so much for joining us in with Northwest Resume and Career Services. When we come back, we started off on real estate. Let's go back to it. We're going to talk about what's going on in the real estate market for people who maybe aren't looking for jobs anymore. Maybe they're retired. We'll be right back after this break.